So this month, October 2024, actually marks 4 years since my very first powerlifting competition. So I thought for today's video, we will do a recap of my competition journey and go and discuss the learnings that have come along the way. And basically go through how I went from totaling 500 kilos to now totaling 725 at my most recent comp in the span of 4 years. So my very first competition was October 2020, very first novice competition at Black Flag Barbell. Shout out Black Flag Barbell. They no longer exist, but it was a really cool comp. I transitioned from doing a bodybuilding kind of training and a bodybuilding comp that I did actually in 2019, I think, which we might go over in a later video another day. But basically, after that bodybuilding comp, I was in off-season and I wanted to explore my options. There was a friend that I knew at the gym that I was training at, Plus Fitness Canberra. Shout out Plus Fitness Canberra. Called Tony Mai. Tony Mai, you might know him, Tony Mai Performance. He was training at the same gym that we were training at, and he was doing powerlifting, and I thought that was really cool, and I also wanted to compete against him because it was just in my nature to be competitive. And so what ended up happening is after my bodybuilding prep, I decided to go into powerlifting and compete in my first powerlifting comp. And in that comp in October 2020, I ended up totaling 500 kilos at, I think I was 75 kilos. I've got my notes here at 75 kilos. And at that comp, it was really cool, first time I've ever been on a platform and competed. Prep was fairly smooth, like a few niggles with my shoulder and bench at that time. But I was very much a beginner. I was very much I had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea how powerlifting comp run. I had so many questions from my coach at that time. Shout out Shahan, who is now running marathons and triathlons. And it was just a really, really cool experience. And I wanted to explore it further because of that experience. It was also very different to bodybuilding in the sense that there wasn't a big focus on food. There wasn't, you weren't cutting. And the way I try to describe things is between bodybuilding and powerlifting is bodybuilding, when you look your best, you feel your worst because you're so depleted. You're so you feel small. I felt tiny when I was on stage. But for powerlifting, you perform the best when you feel the best. And that is honestly a mindset or a feeling that I enjoy much, much more than compared to bodybuilding. And that's why I eventually decided to continue with powerlifting. Not shitting on anyone who does bodybuilding, not trying to badmouth bodybuilding anyway, but that's just how I felt through my experiences. And with that being said, I have considered going back to bodybuilding to do another prep, but that's something to discuss in the future and perhaps another video. Next comp after that wasn't until December 2021. So it took me almost a year and a bit until my next comp, and it was another novice comp. But the reason why it took so long was actually because of COVID. So as you guys may know, there was this thing called COVID in 2020, 2021, and we were stuck in lockdown. We were stuck at homes. We couldn't go anywhere. And during that time, no one was training because gyms were closed for a period of time. And so it took me a while to sort of get back into things to my next novice comp. And that next comp, December 2021, was at Breakthrough Fitness, my second novice comp, and I totaled 607.5. So I added 170 kilos to my total between that 1 year. And I think the reason why I was able to add so much to my total, while it was a longer period of time, was because I did take that off season. I did take that time to build, and obviously newbie games as well. But it did take that time to just build and train, which I have found very, very useful. And you'll see in my future, the next few comps, that the importance of your off season. Moving on from December 2021, after that I actually went to Iceland and just fucked off and went for a holiday right after my comp, which seems like a very common theme as you'll see in the future in these next few comps. But basically, after December 2021, my second novice comp, I decided to do my first sanctioned competition. So March 2020, which is about, December, January, February, March, 3 months after my second novice comp, I decided to do my first sanction competition. And I think it was sort of on a time crunch because I wanted to qualify for states, which would then qualifying for nationals. Back then, with the old federation that we will not name, um, there was those levels of competition: local, state, and national. And so with this first sanction comp, I competed with the intent to compete at junior states. Now, this first sanction comp, it was at Hunter Performance Center, and I ended up totaling 550, which is like 50 or 60 kilos less than what I totaled at my novice comp. But the reason for this was because I started running into quad cramping issues. And that issue was prevalent across the next few comps, as you'll see. Basically, what would happen is throughout my whole prep, throughout my whole training, I wouldn't have any issues with cramping. I wouldn't have any issues with like feeling depleted. But I'd get to comp and I would go into my first squat. Even warm ups were feeling really good. I'd do my first attempt and then my quads would just cramp like straight away, like that. And that's what happened at this comp, which is why I totaled like 60, 70 kilos less than what I should have. Because after my very first squat attempt, I think it was like at 180 or 185, my quads started cramping. And it was to the point where I couldn't walk. Like I was literally like, I was either sitting or lying down and my quads were just like convulsing and just like, I don't know if I can try to find a video, but it was literally just like moving like an alien inside my leg. And that was my first experience of cramping. And funnily enough, that was the first comp that I competed in at 74. My first two novice comps, I competed at 75 kilos and 77.5 kilos. And this is the first comp that I like sat at a much lower body weight, basically 5 kilos less than my last comp, my second novice comp. And, I started experiencing a bout of cramping. I still qualified though. I think the qualifying total was like 5'10" or something, really, really low for under 74 junior. So then I ended up doing junior states, which was in May 2022. So that was March, April, May, 2 months after my first sanction comp. 2 months after, New South Wales junior states, back at Hunter Performance Center, and again, my quads started cramping. I think that comp I may have weighed in at like 73 point something. And this time my quads didn't cramp on squats, but it started cramping on deadlifts instead. So I think I opened at 250 or 260. I didn't get it. I think my knees locked out too early and my quads were cramping slightly. No, sorry, I didn't get it because I think I rocked at the top or something. I lost move. There was a little bit of movement at the top of the rep and I may have dropped it a little. And for my second attempt, we went from 260 to 270, or 250 to 260. I can't remember the details, but I said to my handler, I was like, I can do it. Like, let's go up. I can get it. I got it. I did this in training. Like, it moved easy, it moved fast. And then second attempt, I missed. Third attempt, I missed. And so what actually happened is I bombed out of New South Wales states. And so when you bomb out, it means that you don't get the 3 attempts of what any particular lift in the squat, bench, or deadlift. And basically with that bomb out, I was devastated. I thought that my whole powerlifting career was over. I thought that I'd worked so hard to get to this point. I wanted to prove myself so badly. I wanted to prove myself to other people so badly, to the point that I put so much pressure on myself to just fail, to just bomb out. And there's a funny story. Basically, after my third attempt, I bombed out. Bethany Parker was there. She basically like grabbed my shoulder and just brought me off the platform. I walked outside. There was like a little side gate in the warm-up room. I walked outside and I just put my hands on a wall and just started crying because I was so upset. I was just so genuinely upset. And Beth was just comforting me, and then she says to me, "There's someone here to see you." And in my mind, I think, is it my girlfriend? Is it my family? Is it someone to comfort me? But no, it was someone waiting to drug test me. But I got drug tested at the comp that I bombed out at, which was insane to me that I bombed out, and they still wanted to drug test me for whatever freaking reason. I think the reason why was because they select the person they want to drug test before you compete. So whether or not you have a good comp or a bad comp, they'll drug test you regardless afterwards. But it was just so like the situation was so ironic and so comical that I couldn't believe it. I looked at them and I was like, "Are you serious? Like, you're gonna drug test me?" And I said to Beth, "But I bombed out." And yeah, that was the day that I bombed out, but also had to pee in a cup in front of an old guy and get drug tested. So that was a fun experience. But one of the key learnings, one of the key takeaways that I really got from this comp was that competing should be about yourself. Competing shouldn't be about trying to prove yourself to other people and trying to chase someone else or try to battle against someone else. And while, yes, like that aspect of competing, being competitive, pushing yourself against another person can be quite exciting and can help push you, it can also put you in a negative headspace. And that's where it put me. At that time in the under 74 juniors, it was a very competitive weight class. And my deadlifts were pretty strong, one of the strongest within that weight class. And so that whole comp, after squats, after bench, when we got to deadlifts, I started to say like, all right, it's go time. Like, it's time to play. It's time to have fun. Because deadlift was my lift at that time. That's what I thought. But what happened was it put a lot of pressure on myself and it skewed my decision making. It put me in a place where, because I wasn't able to build my subtotal on the squat and bench, I then had to push harder on the deadlifts. I had to prove myself with the deadlifts. And I think that's a really tricky situation to be in. That's a very negative headspace to be in because it places so much pressure on yourself to have to perform. And what I've found from my experience and from coaching other people is that when there's a lot of pressure for you to perform, if you're not calm, if you're not relaxed in your competition, it's very likely that you're not going to perform well. Your arousal levels will be very different to what you're used to in training. The stimulus that you're trying to provide yourself, like I was pumping music, I was sniffing ammonia, when I don't really do that much in training. That put me in a completely different headspace and I wasn't calm, I wasn't relaxed. And so, if you are competing and you are a newer lifter, you haven't really figured out, who you are as a lifter, which is okay. It takes time. Just do the same thing that you do in training. Don't try to pressure yourself to perform in any way, to do a certain thing in comp. Take what's there in take what's there in comp. You're playing to what is happening there on comp day, not what you wish is going to be there based on your training. Because at the end of the day, your comp day is completely different to what you do in training. It's a completely different day. It's a completely different situation. And if you put so much pressure on yourself to perform in any certain way, when it comes to comp, it's most likely that it may not turn out that way. The outcome may not be what you wished for, which can be very debilitating and be very upsetting. So if you want a good comp experience, don't go in with no expectations, but go in with the expectation that you'll play to the day. You'll do what's there, and that's what you want, and have fun. I think that's really important as well. So that was my main learning from that comp, from bombing out and then being drug tested. You're not going to have a bad comp day if you have fun. Even if you don't lift the way you wanted to, you don't get a certain number. As long as you have fun, like that's all you can really ask for. So that was junior states. And because I bombed out and I still wanted to go to nationals, I had to compete in another state championship. So in the next month, I think it was like 5 or 6 weeks between junior states and my next comp, I decided to go to Canberra, drive to Canberra, book an Airbnb and compete at Canberra States. Now, at Canberra States, I qualified, thankfully, but I still had issues with cramping. And that's when we started to think about, like, what am I doing with my nutrition? What should I be doing to refuel properly so that I'm not cramping anymore? But I ended up cramping my squats. I think my first squat, I did okay, but as I got off the platform, I started cramping. I timed out on my second squat, and then I did get my third squat. Bench and deadlifts were okay, but I only got one deadlift, my first deadlift out of 3. The reason why is because I think the bar was slipping and I just couldn't hold on to it. But yeah, that's basically what happened. But I qualified for nationals. So from there, even though I didn't have great performance, I still qualified, which is better than bombing out. So I moved on to Junior Nats, which was in Melbourne. That was my first interstate competition experience, and that was in September 2022. So June, July, August, September. So 3 months. 3 months after Canberra States, about 4 months after I bombed out at Junior States, New South Wales States, I competed at Junior Nationals. And Junior Nationals, I bombed out again. And I took this competition, like the outcome of this competition bombing out, much better than I took bombing out at Junior States, even though it was still a bit upsetting. But yeah, at Junior States, what had happened was on my first deadlift, like squat and bench did really well. I was really happy. I got all squat attempts in. I think I missed my last bench. But coming into quads, I started feeling a bit crampy. And I don't know if you know how that feels, but like your muscles start to sort of like seize up a little if you do like any sort of like fast motion. And warm-ups, I started to feel a bit crampy. And after my first attempt of the lifts, what happened was I locked out, but I stayed locked out. It stayed locked out because my quads had cramped. And basically, I dropped the bar and I was stuck like this on the platform. And Jason Raby, who was spotting me at that time, literally went from behind me, grabbed me, and had to like carry me off the platform as my two legs stuck out like this because my quads were so cramped, which is pretty crazy. There's a really funny video of that, but it was just so ironic that I bombed out at Junior States. I made my travel. I paid to compete at Canberra States to qualify for Nationals. And then I flew all the way to Melbourne to compete interstate, only to bomb out again. And luckily, I had that experience of bombing out at Junior States. And I was able to keep my head high. You know, I had given it my best shot. I had given it my best try. And unfortunately, the cramping still got the best of me. But that was a competition where it really came to mind that I need to take this cramping thing a bit more seriously. I needed to really take action on. And if I didn't, then this will just continue happening and I wouldn't be able to compete as a powerlifter. So that competition was a really pivotal moment for me because I realized that, you know, if I don't do anything about this is going to keep happening. And this relates back to last week's video where I spoke about injuries and niggles. Nothing will change if nothing changes. You know, if you have an injury or if you have some sort of, you know, issue or whatever, it's going to stay the same if you keep doing the same thing. So I did have doubts in my mind about whether or not this issue of cramping could be overcome. There were questions in my head about whether or not I would be able to get past this. And it, you know, while I was trying to keep my head up, while I was trying to have fun in my competition and in powerlifting, there was a serious point in that time where I considered like, you know, maybe I just wasn't made to be a powerlifter. Maybe this just wasn't meant to be. And because of that, I really seriously considered just like not competing anymore and not powerlifting anymore. Because it got to a point where I was like, this thing keeps happening every single time that I compete. But eventually, like, I got over it. I got over it because I thought to myself, okay, why am I powerlifting to begin? Why am I even competing to begin with? And the reason why is because I genuinely had fun. I genuinely enjoyed myself and I loved the people that I was competing with. I loved the people that I was training with. And that passion for the sport and the enjoyment and the happiness that it brought me kept me going. And I think that if you're someone who, you know, is struggling to find their way in powerlifting at the moment, you don't really know where you stand, you don't really know whether or not you want to compete, it's okay. Because at the end of the day, like, you don't need to be competitive. You don't need to be the best in the world at powerlifting. It can be something that you just enjoy. And I think that if more people found just simple enjoyment in powerlifting and just lifted for the sake of lifting and having fun, enjoying things with their friends, enjoying lifting with their friends and being very grateful and appreciative for the fact that you can actually lift when there are a lot of people around the world who don't have that ability. They don't have the privilege of even touching a barbell. I think that, if you're able to maintain that sort of mindset and maintain that sort of headspace, you're able to go far. Because at the end of the day, powerlifting is a long-term sport. And you'll see that it took me 4 years, and it took me, I think, 12 or 10 or 12 competitions for me to get it right, to actually stop cramping and start performing. And so for a lot of younger powerlifters that have only been in the sport for 1 or 2 years and think that, oh, my career's over, like, I'm not progressing, I'm not doing this, I'm not doing that, I'm not getting there. It's not true. Because all you need to do is apply consistency over a longer period of time to get to where you want to be. And you'll see this from my experience. Now, after junior nats, after I bombed out, I was in a space where, like I said before, I was questioning a lot of things. But I kept going. I decided to keep going. And so my next comp after this was in March 2023. So that was September, October, November, December, January, February, March, 6 months later. And I competed at Perth Cup, which was in Brisbane. And this was my first comp as an under 83 kilo powerlifter. And going up a weight class was probably the best decision for my powerlifting career that I've ever made. And there were people who had told me to go up a weight class way before this, much, much before this. And I didn't listen because I was very hard stuck on trying to be competitive in 74 class, which is something that I truly believe shouldn't be consideration. And to talk more about this, I think that if you're trying to cut weight to try to be competitive in a weight class, unless there's a special circumstance where it's like your last year in the juniors, for example, and you're trying to go to Worlds, you want to just have an experience of going to Worlds, and you know that by cutting a weight class, you'll be able to perform and place and go to Worlds, that's fine. I understand that. But if you're a young powerlifter and you're a lifter who is still finding their way, and you're trying to cut weight, you're trying to lose weight, to try to fit into a weight class with the hopes of being more competitive, I really don't think that that's going to be optimal and effective for you. I'm very much an advocate for whatever weight class you're sitting in. Say for example, I was 78 kilos. Fill out that weight class. Fill out that weight class to its completion. Don't cut down to the weight class below. And the reason why I think this is because if your body naturally sits at a certain body weight, and you're healthy and you're relatively fit and okay at that weight, there's no reason why you need to cut when there's much more reason and much more pros to actually filling out that weight class, building more muscle mass, building more ability to perform better at a higher body weight. There's much more potential to grow, I believe, by doing that sort of strategy than cutting down into the weight class below. That is my personal opinion. And I understand it's heavily impacted and heavily influenced by my personal experiences, but I also have seen this outcome of feeling much more potential by going up weight class or filling out your weight class than going down a weight class. I've seen many more powerlifters, not detrain, but go into a downward trajectory by cutting weight than going up weight class. So basically this comp was my first comp as an 83 kilo competitor. I weighed in at 81.5 and I totaled 670, which is I think 70 kilos more than my previous best comp total. And also I didn't cramp. Not only did I weigh a lot heavier, almost 10 kilos heavier, but I was proactive with my strategies of refueling, pickle juice between attempts, making sure that I was intaking enough sodium and all those sort of things. So the nutrition side of things was sorted. And those are one of the things that I definitely think helped with preventing cramping. But I'll go into further with one of my other competitions where I was still cramping. Another strategy which I think has helped me. Now, after Perth Cup, we went to Open States 6 months later in November 2023, and at Open States, I totaled 690. At Open States, though, I think there was some cramping on squats. It was very, very minor, but after my third squat, my quad was cramping. It wasn't as bad as before where I literally couldn't move. I just needed to massage it out with some deep heat, which I actually highly recommend as a strategy for cramping. Get some deep heat on it, rub it, and get some warmth into that area. Get some blood into that area. Because what happens is your blood carries some nutrients. And from, I think, a study that I read, or someone told me that your blood carries a certain enzyme which helps the muscles relax. It's responsible for the muscles relaxing. And so by getting heat and warmth into the muscle, it promotes more blood flow. And because it promotes more blood flow, more enzymes, more nutrients get pushed to that area, which can help relax the muscle when you're cramping. So if you are cramping, if you ever are someone who experiences cramping, get some deep heat on it and just rub it and just massage it out. And hopefully that helps. But yeah, that's when I started to think about other things besides nutrition, which could be impacting my performance and impacting the cramping. And one thing that I found out, one thing that I researched was the basically the ability for the muscles to perform at any given point in time. And what I mean by that is essentially the preparedness or the how ready the muscles were ready to perform an action of like pushing really hard or creating a lot of force, which is what you do in powerlifting, right? Like if you have a lot of kilos on your back, 200 something kilos on your back, your muscles are going to have to work really, really hard. And what I discovered for myself and what has helped since then, since that experience, is before going onto the platform or before attempting a really heavy lift, what I tend to do is I start either running on the spot, jogging on the spot, jumping on the spot to get my legs, get my muscles in my legs working. And what I've found is it has actually stimulated the muscle in a way where it's ready to perform. It's prepared to push when I'm about to lift. And that has actually prevented a lot of the cramping, which is very interesting. So I do plan to delve into like the cramping sort of like topic in another video. But that's something that I want to, I guess, share with you. If you are someone who's experienced cramping, maybe give that a try. Before you go for your lift, like start just running really rapidly on the spot or jumping, doing star jumps, which is commonly what I do to get the muscles warm and ready and see whether or not that still causes any harm. Now, after open states, for whatever reason, I decided to do junior states as well because I was still within the age frame. The reason was because I wanted to do my last comp as a junior, my last state competition as a junior, and see where it took me. And so in December 2023, which was 2 months after open states, I competed at junior states and I totaled 705. So I cracked the 700 total at 82.25 kilos. And this is actually my first podium position. Now, at local states, you do get awarded medals if you come first in your weight class, but you could be the only person in your weight class. This was my first podium position at like a championship, and it ended up coming second, which was really, really cool. So after 3 years of competing, I got my first podium position, which is really, really cool, but it should also outline the amount of patience that was required to get there. And I'm going to talk about patience a bit later. Now, after junior states, obviously competing at open states and junior states qualified me to go to Open Nationals. March 2024, very first Open Nationals for APA. I totaled 707.5 and I came 6th. So 2.5 kilo PR, competition PR. But I would have totaled 727, I believe, or 717, if I not missed my last deadlift. And my last deadlift was 300. 300 is a number that I've been chasing for a while. And I still haven't gotten it. I still haven't deadlifted 300 yet. But it is something that I've been chasing for a while. And I think it's so meaningful to me because it's something that helped start my journey as a powerlifter. Back then, during my first sanctioned competition, my first novice competitions, I was already somewhat close-ish to 300. I was pulling like 260, 270. And that number was close. 300 was close. And since then, I think it's continued to drive me to to reach that destination of deadlifting 300. But what I've found more is that it's just been the journey that has been so much more enjoyable. And I think by just enjoying the journey and appreciating the journey for what it is, it's helped me enjoy powerlifting a lot more. But yeah, open nats, 707.5, 2.5 kilo PR, total PR. And then my most recent comp in September, last month, I competed at Power Powers, which is probably one of the most fun comps I've competed at. The concept behind Power Powers is that you team up in pairs of two, and the winner is decided based off the combined total GL of the two lifters. And so I partnered up with Kat, my girlfriend, and I totaled 725 at 82.3 kilos, and I GL'd 100.79 GL points. And so I cracked the 100 GL points. That was a really good comp. No cramping, pretty much like a picture perfect day. My handlers were fantastic in selecting the right attempts for me. I really, really wanted to do the 300, but it wasn't there on the day. So, as you may have seen, I have done a lot of comps over the past 4 years. I've done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 comps over the past 4 years. And a lot of those comps, most of the comps were not good comps. I bombed out of 2. I cramped in most of them. And it's only been recently where I've actually had good competitions. And I want to acknowledge that, and I want to point that out because it took me 4 years and 2 competitions that I bombed out of to actually get it right. Patience is everything in this sport. And powerlifting is such a long-term sport. You can't expect to get stronger within a year. You can't expect to get to a competitive level. You can't even expect to qualify with a new qualifying totals with APA. You can't even expect to qualify within 1 or 2 years of powerlifting unless you're already naturally strong. It's really hard, and you have to make sure that you're patient with yourself. Now, patient doesn't mean to be passive. Patient doesn't mean sitting your ass and not work. What patience does mean, though, to me at least, is you focus on doing the things in your training sessions that count and matter the most so that you're able to achieve the outcomes that you want to achieve. And being patient alongside with that means you do this over a prolonged period of time to achieve your outcome, or to achieve your goal. I think that for a lot of young powerlifters, they look up to these, world champions, people who competed at Sheffield, people who competed at Worlds, IPF Worlds, and they see the outcome, but they don't see the process. And from my experience and from learning from other people's experience, the process is so, so long. I don't expect to be in Worlds the next 2 to 3 years. It might take me 10 years to get there. But that's a fact, and that's something that I'm willing to accept because I just genuinely enjoy the sport. And I think that if you're someone who's stressed about trying to get to some point, you're trying to get to some outcome, you're trying to, hit a certain number, take a step back and really think about why you lifted to begin with. Because for the most part, I know that for most people, they started lifting because they just enjoyed it and they enjoyed the process. And so if you can find enjoyment in that process, if you can really find fulfillment in lifting for the sake of lifting and lifting for the enjoyment of it, you are going to go a lot longer and you're going to go much further than someone who's so hard stuck on trying to hit a certain number or hit a certain point in a certain milestone. Because at the end of the day, say for example, your goal is to deadlift to 100 and then you deadlift to 100. What next? There's always going to be something more to chase. But if you're not appreciative and you're not grateful for what you have right now, when you get to that point, it's not going to mean anything. And that goes into my next point. That goes into my next point, that you need to do hard work for things to have meaning. Getting stronger is really, really hard. Being a powerlifter and getting stronger is not meant to be easy. Because if it was easy, everyone would do it. And if it was easy, it wouldn't be so meaningful. the reason why there's so many emotions involved in powerlifting, like for example, when I did a 300, I'm probably gonna cry because it has so much meaning to me because I've worked so hard for it. But things are going to be meaningless, and things are not going to have meaning if they're so easy to obtain. Goals are not going to be meaningful if you get them tomorrow. If you're able to achieve them with such little work, without hard work, it's not meaningful, and everyone will do it. And there will be no value in the sport. There will be no value in your goals. So, what I want you to think about is, you have to train really, really hard to get even a bit stronger. Especially as you develop as a powerlifter, especially as you get stronger. You have to work really, really hard. You have to put in the hard yards every single day. Especially if you're someone who wants to be up there and you're someone who wants to be different. You're someone who wants to be, the next champion or go to states or go to nationals. No more states, but if you want to go to nationals, right? It's really, really hard. It's hard work, and it's something that not everyone can achieve. But with the right mindset, with the mentality of enjoying lifting, enjoying training, it will provide meaning to you because with hard work will come meaningful goals. Beyond this, on to my last point about just a recap of my competitions, my competition journey, and my learning is that you're not entitled to get stronger. No one is entitled to get stronger. There is no entitlement in powerlifting. There are some people who act that way, and there are some people who behave that way. But I really believe, and I want you to also know that there is no entitlement in powerlifting, and you're not entitled to get stronger. And what I mean by that is, sometimes I see people who are entitled and because they think they train some sort of fancy training style or they train at some gym with some sort of equipment, that there's an entitlement for them to be stronger or at least be perceived as strong. I think that's completely false. And I think that if you're someone who thinks that way, that thinking is going to be very, very short-lived, and you'll find your end of your journey very, very soon. I think that when you think that there's some entitlement for you to achieve any sort of goal, entitlement to get stronger, you'll be very quickly disappointed because there is no such thing in powerlifting. If you're willing to put in the hard work, though, and you're willing to put in the effort and the time and be consistent with your training, then you will develop the rights or you'll develop the opportunity to get stronger. So I think for a lot of young powerlifters, you would benefit from thinking in a more opportunistic mindset where, if I go to this session and I do my best in this session, I will have the opportunity to get stronger. How much better is that than thinking like, if I do this, I'm going to get stronger, and being entitled to that strength or being entitled to that goal. I think that with that sort of mindset of being very opportunistic, being appreciative and being very grateful, that will help you become a much more long-term and much more successful powerlifter as compared to thinking that you're entitled to some sort of achievement or goal. So that is what I wanted to talk about today, my competition journey and my learnings, and hopefully you got some value out of it. If you did like this video, please leave a like, comment any questions that you might have. I'll try and answer it on my socials. And please subscribe and hit the bell notification if you want to get notified about my next video. But thank you so much for tuning in. I'll see you guys in the next one.